Where are all the white women at? I mean,
what?
This is a story I learned about earlier today. You ready? When the apes of peace first boarded the bus, they had out their water bottles and banana chips ready to go. Their tongues were hanging out like loose rubber bands, flailing. Everyone got on the bus like a bunch of barbarians jumping over the walls of a once grand but now fading empire, like America. And the high school physics teacher mentioned something about potential energy as he stared on from an objective location. Anyway, he sipped his coffee, had a few pours of half and half cream and just a pinch of raw sugar from Hawaii. They call it raw sugar. It's from Hawaii. Anyway, it was brown like the coffee in the cup in his hands. He sipped pensively, pondering the iniquitous clouds in the sky. But they were far away enough for his sipping to be calm and long, cumulus, he thought. But that's when the vibrato of the fleshy flash wads unleashed their honorary power. The apes of peace had tongues that defied all seriousness. Those pretty good tongues. You could really just feel the saliva dripping down their chins, being splashed against the bus's interior windows and the seats. It's curious, the social studies teacher mused, that the seats in your standard yellow bus have no seat belts. The apes of peace gibbered and then jabbered, no sense of the civilized, no care for their neighbors existed within the hull. There were long swirls of drool inching or centimetering along each apes of peace's epidermis. I'm reminded of Adam Leore's poem about tongue. Anyway, the high school physics teacher mumbled something about gravity and taking things for granted, and cold horribly like coffee. Then with the return of a key like the open of a floodgates wheel, the type you see in the action movie starring Bruce Willis, or name an action movie star.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Thank you. Well, the bus began to really get going. The dusty road the apes of peace called their home for years to come. Goodbye, desolate railroad, cried the music teacher. Then the apes of peace were finished with their banana chips, and the bus had been on the road for a couple minutes anyway, and the water bottles were still weighed down with aqua. The apes of peace picked little remaining pieces of banana chips out of their teeth, dusted off banana chip dust from their shirts and pants, which the janitor, who was really there, somewhere in the middle of the bus, frowned upon with an upturned nose, and flicked their bags, which had once housed banana chips by the handful, to one another like prehistoric missiles. This action of pelting small, resealable bags at one another, which often resulted in plastic bags on the floor out the window and onto very elaborate apes of peace hairstyles, resulted in a highly perturbed janitor. You might expect the bus driver to be equally, if not more so, perturbed as she would be the one to do all the sweeping up around here, but she had a huge distraction on her hands, which we will see very soon. For now, the apes of peace were doing all the distraction to everyone else on the bus. The banana chips really have THC in them, said the chemistry teacher, but the philosophy teacher looked on with a yawn. He thought of Camus, Plato, Heidegger, Kant, Kierkegaard, Locke, Descartes, and that's pretty much what he thinks about through the entirety of this story, even at the very end of it, when that great distraction occurs. Meanwhile, the apes of peace, with their backpacks and textbooks, wave their arms in the air like buffoons and grin heavily. If you were on the bus, you might hear songs being sung, chants being held, and a general chaos that rivaled even that of the universe. The physics teacher thought about his theories until he accidentally or not accidentally, if you were the physics teacher thinking about how to respond to the incident, got hit in the head with a flailing apes of peace limb, but he was silenced after a water bottle was handed to him. He nourished himself back to the stars of the story. The apes of peace wore grins. Their grins were the granite blocks falling out roadsters traveling along Route 95 in the United States of America. The bus edged along a much different highway at the speed of around 95 miles per hour, where M stands for miles, P for per, and hour for hour. The apes hated using acronyms and abbreviations as they were so hard to memorize. But some acronyms really weren't that bad. For instance, MPH was not really a burden as it had become its own word. The foreign language instructor made inside on his notepad, which sat next to his Don Quixote's copy, unabridged in the original tongue, Spanish. Don Quixote's was written in Spanish. Anyway, from behind him in a similar seatbeltless seat, you might spot the computer teacher with his thick glasses that can see so far away, though not too much further than unaided healthy eyes. Typing on his keyboard, the digital notepad of all digital notepads, an item that the computer teacher was very proud of, that learned technology was almost like learning a whole new language. And then trying to deal with those who did not know the new language of technology was like learning a whole new language. And then being bogged down by such a conflict was like learning a whole new language. With all these languages to learn and the trouble of learning them, the computer teacher made a note to talk to the foreign teacher. Then he thought again. Deleted the note, made a second note to talk to the psychology teacher. Who here is in high school? Good. All these freaking teachers. Then he realized he didn't need to talk to any teacher. He deleted his note, made a third note to talk to the philosophy teacher. The computer teacher thought to himself, I am smart enough, I have best technology. But what a surprise the computer teacher was in for. Camus, Plato, Heidegger, Kant, Kierkegaard, Locke, Descartes, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. That's the philosophy teacher, remember? Anyway, the apes of peace had finally gotten over their THC banana buzz, and their water bottles were half filled with air and half filled with water, and the teachers were all into their books, an e-book, and don't act surprised, you were going to learn about this a long time ago, which you did, because I just freaking told you. The bus driver, this one named Melna, though she'd never admit it. If your name is Melna, would you admit your name is Melna? No, probably not. Instead, well, Brandy, Mrs. Brandy, that's what we're going with. Mind you, this happened in less than a bullet time, but it did happen in a manner that was quite quick. She named herself Mona as the bus was acknowledged. It was the understanding to be on the wrong side of the road. She let out a little moan, Mona did. The first moan she let out in 30 years, and since seeing her last cat die in her arms, stopped breathing the slow, short breaths, the heart beating to a stop like a drum roll. Now, 30 years later, it was more of a gong burst with some cymbals on the side. Mona held on and moved her foot with the brake. She never saw her cat, which was named Percival, in her head before the great distraction was over. No, she saw the bus, and in the bus's front seat, the driver's seat, the captain's seat. One of the apes wore the great antagonist of her time with a large banana chip the size of 100 apes piece banana chips, covering the ape's face entirely. It was like a mask, and then the explosion killed everyone, and everyone's dead.